She sits in her car outside her apartment building, hands trembling on the steering wheel, knowing that when she walks through that door, she'll have to face him again. The familiar knot in her stomach tightens as she remembers this morning's argument, yesterday's silent treatment, and the weeks of walking on eggshells that came before. She tells herself it's just a rough patch, that all relationships have problems, that she can fix this if she just tries harder. But deep down, in a place she's been afraid to examine, she knows the truth. This relationship is slowly destroying the person she used to be. If this scenario sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions of people stay trapped in relationships that drain their energy, compromise their values, and erode their sense of self. They stay because they're afraid of being alone, because they've invested so much time and emotion, because they hope things will change, or because they've been convinced that the problems are their fault. They stay until the cost of leaving feels greater than the cost of staying, not realizing that every day they remain, they're paying a price they can never recover. Today, we're going to explore one of life's most difficult decisions: when to let go of relationships that are harming us. This isn't about giving up at the first sign of conflict or running away from every challenge. It's about recognizing when a relationship has become fundamentally toxic and finding the courage to choose your own well-being over false hope and misplaced loyalty. I'm going to share with you 5 clear signs that it's time to end a toxic relationship, drawn from the wisdom of Stoic philosophy and validated by what we know about healthy human connections. These aren't easy truths to face, but they're necessary ones. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and the other person is to walk away. But first, let's establish what healthy relationships look like from a Stoic perspective, because you can't recognize what's toxic until you understand what's healthy. The ancient Stoics had a profound understanding of human relationships. They didn't see connections with others as mere entertainment or emotional comfort, but as opportunities for mutual growth, virtue, and flourishing. To the Stoics, the highest form of relationship was one where both people helped each other become better versions of themselves, where virtue was encouraged and vice was gently corrected, where both individuals could pursue their highest potential without fear of judgment or sabotage. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." But he also wrote extensively about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who elevate your character rather than degrade it. He understood that we become like the people we spend time with, and that choosing our companions wisely is one of the most important decisions we can make. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, wrote about friendship as a meeting of minds and virtues. He believed that true friends should be able to share their deepest thoughts without fear, should inspire each other to moral excellence, and should provide honest feedback when needed. He wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end, recognizing that sometimes we must let go of relationships that no longer serve our highest good." The Stoics weren't cold or emotionally distant. They valued love, friendship, and human connection deeply. But they also understood that not all relationships are worth preserving, and that staying in harmful connections out of fear or habit is a form of self-betrayal. They believed that we have a duty to ourselves and to others to maintain relationships that support virtue, and to have the courage to end those that promote vice. With this foundation in mind, let's explore the 5 signs that indicate it's time to let go of a toxic relationship. The first sign is when someone consistently violates your core values and shows no respect for what matters most to you. This goes beyond simple disagreements or different preferences. We're talking about fundamental moral and ethical boundaries that define who you are as a person. Your core values might include honesty, respect, kindness, loyalty, or integrity. These aren't negotiable aspects of your character. They're the principles that guide your decisions and define your sense of right and wrong. When someone in your life consistently acts in ways that violate these values and shows no remorse or willingness to change, they're essentially asking you to compromise your very identity to accommodate their behavior. Marcus Aurelius faced this challenge even within his own family. His son Commodus grew up to become one of Rome's most tyrannical emperors, engaging in behavior that went against everything Marcus stood for. While Marcus never stopped loving his son, he understood that he couldn't compromise his own principles to enable Commodus's destructive choices. This might look like staying with a partner who lies to you repeatedly, maintaining a friendship with someone who betrays your trust regularly, or continuing to work closely with someone who engages in unethical behavior. The key indicator is consistency. Everyone makes mistakes and has moments of poor judgment. But when someone repeatedly acts against your core values, despite your clear communication about their importance to you, they're showing you that they don't respect what you stand for. This doesn't mean you should expect everyone to share all your values or believe exactly what you believe. Healthy relationships can accommodate different perspectives and preferences. But there's a difference between having different opinions about politics or lifestyle choices and having someone consistently act in ways that violate your fundamental sense of right and wrong. When you find yourself constantly making excuses for someone's behavior, explaining away their actions to others, or feeling like you have to hide parts of the relationship from people you respect, these are warning signs that your values are being compromised. The Stoics believed that our character is our most precious possession and that protecting it is more important than maintaining any relationship. The second sign is when the relationship consistently drains your energy and prevents your personal growth rather than supporting it. Healthy relationships should be sources of mutual enrichment, not constant depletion. Seneca wrote about the importance of choosing companions who inspire us to be better. He said we should seek out people who challenge us intellectually, support us emotionally, and encourage us to pursue our highest potential. When a relationship becomes a constant source of stress, anxiety, or emotional exhaustion, it's no longer serving its proper purpose in your life. This type of toxicity often manifests as emotional vampirism, where one person consistently takes energy, attention, and emotional resources without giving anything meaningful in return. You might find yourself constantly managing their emotions, solving their problems, or walking on eggshells to avoid their reactions. Meanwhile, your own needs, goals, and dreams get pushed aside or minimized. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with this person. Do you feel energized, inspired, and supported, or do you feel drained, anxious, and emotionally depleted? Do conversations with them leave you feeling heard and valued, or do you find yourself constantly defending your thoughts and feelings? Do they celebrate your successes and support your goals, or do they minimize your achievements and discourage your aspirations? The Stoics believed that we have a limited amount of energy and attention in life, and that we should invest these precious resources wisely. If someone consistently drains these resources without contributing positively to your life, they're essentially stealing from your potential. You have every right to protect your energy and direct it toward relationships and activities that support your growth and flourishing. This doesn't mean that relationships should never require effort or that you should abandon people during difficult times. True friends and loving partners will go through challenges together and support each other through tough periods. But there's a difference between temporary difficulties and chronic toxicity. The key is whether the relationship has periods of mutual support and growth, or whether it's consistently one-sided and draining. The third sign is when someone shows no genuine remorse for their harmful actions and makes no real effort to change destructive patterns. This is perhaps one of the most heartbreaking aspects of toxic relationships, the false hope that keeps people trapped in harmful situations. Many people stay in toxic relationships because they believe the other person will change. They hold on to memories of good times, promises of improvement, or brief periods of better behavior. But the Stoics understood the difference between genuine change and manipulation, between authentic remorse and empty apologies designed to maintain control. Epictetus, who had been enslaved and understood firsthand the difference between words and actions, taught that we should judge people by their consistent behavior over time, not by their promises or occasional good acts. He said, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." This principle applies perfectly to toxic relationships. People who are genuinely committed to change will demonstrate it through consistent actions over time, not just through words or temporary improvements. Genuine remorse involves acknowledging the harm caused, taking full responsibility without making excuses, understanding the impact of their actions on others, and making sustained efforts to change the behavior. It's not about dramatic apologies or grand gestures, but about quiet, consistent work to become a better person. Manipulation, on the other hand, involves making you feel responsible for their behavior, offering excuses or justifications for harmful actions, making promises they don't keep, or showing temporary improvement followed by a return to old patterns. This creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, which is actually more psychologically addictive than consistent negative behavior. If someone has repeatedly hurt you and shows no genuine effort to change, believing that they will transform is not hope, it's delusion. The Stoics valued truth above comfort, and the truth is that people only change when they genuinely want to and are willing to do the hard work required. You cannot love someone into changing, and you cannot sacrifice enough of yourself to make them become who you need them to be. The fourth sign is when you've lost your authentic self in the relationship. This is one of the most insidious forms of toxicity because it happens gradually, often without your conscious awareness. The Stoics placed enormous emphasis on living according to your nature, being true to your authentic self, and maintaining your integrity regardless of external circumstances. They believed that losing yourself to please others or avoid conflict was one of the greatest tragedies that could befall a human being. In toxic relationships, you might find yourself constantly editing your thoughts, suppressing your opinions, or changing your behavior to avoid negative reactions. You walk on eggshells, afraid to be yourself because you never know what might trigger anger, criticism, or withdrawal. You find yourself agreeing with things you don't believe, laughing at things that aren't funny, or staying silent when you should speak up. Over time, this self-censorship becomes so habitual that you lose touch with your own thoughts and feelings. You might find yourself unsure about your own preferences, doubting your perceptions of reality, or feeling like you don't know who you are anymore. Friends and family might comment that you seem different, less vibrant, or not like yourself. This loss of authenticity is particularly damaging because it disconnects you from your own inner wisdom and moral compass. When you can't trust your own thoughts and feelings, you become dependent on others for validation and direction. This creates a cycle of dependence that makes it even harder to recognize and leave toxic situations. The Stoics would say that no relationship is worth the cost of your authentic self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." While this doesn't mean being completely self-absorbed, it does mean that your primary concern should be living according to your own values and nature, not constantly adapting yourself to please others. If you find yourself thinking, "I don't recognize who I've become in this relationship," or "I can't remember the last time I felt free to be myself," these are serious warning signs that the relationship is fundamentally toxic to your well-being. The fifth and final sign is when the relationship actively prevents you from living according to your principles or engaging in virtuous behavior. This is perhaps the most serious indicator from a Stoic perspective, because it suggests that the relationship is not just harming you personally, but corrupting your character. The Stoics believed that virtue was the highest good and that nothing was worth compromising your moral integrity. They understood that we become complicit in wrongdoing when we enable or ignore unethical behavior in others, even if we're not directly participating in it. This might manifest as being pressured to lie, cheat, or deceive others. It could involve being asked to participate in gossip, betrayal, or cruelty toward others. You might find yourself making compromises that go against your fundamental beliefs about how people should be treated. Or you might discover that maintaining the relationship requires you to ignore or enable behavior that you know is wrong. Sometimes this happens gradually. You might start by making small compromises, telling yourself that it's not that big a deal or that everyone does it. But over time, these small compromises accumulate, and you find yourself living in a way that doesn't align with your values. You might look in the mirror one day and realize that you've become someone you don't respect. The Stoics were clear that no relationship, no matter how long-standing or emotionally significant, is worth compromising your virtue. They believed that our character is the only thing that truly belongs to us, and that protecting it is our highest responsibility. If someone is asking you to act against your principles to maintain their affection or avoid their anger, they're asking you to betray yourself. This doesn't mean being inflexible or unable to compromise on practical matters. Healthy relationships involve give and take, negotiation, and finding ways to accommodate different needs and preferences. But there's a fundamental difference between compromising on where to go for dinner and compromising on whether to tell the truth or treat others with respect. If you find yourself thinking, "I don't like who I am when I'm with this person," or "I'm doing things I never thought I would do," these are clear indicators that the relationship is toxic to your moral development and well-being. Now that we've identified these 5 signs, let's talk about how to approach the difficult decision of whether to end a toxic relationship. The Stoics developed a framework for making tough choices that can be incredibly helpful in these situations. The first principle is the dichotomy of control. You cannot control other people's behavior, choices, or feelings. You can only control your own responses and decisions. This means that you cannot fix a toxic relationship by trying harder, loving more, or changing yourself to accommodate the other person's dysfunction. The only thing you can control is whether you choose to remain in the relationship or not. This realization can be both liberating and terrifying. It's liberating because it frees you from the impossible burden of trying to change someone else. It's terrifying because it means the responsibility for your well-being rests entirely with you. But the Stoics would say that this responsibility is also your greatest power. The second principle is amor fati, or love of fate. This doesn't mean accepting abuse or resigning yourself to unhappiness. It means accepting the reality of your situation as it is, not as you wish it were or as you hope it might become. If someone has consistently shown you who they are through their actions, believe them. Don't waste energy hoping they'll become someone different. The third principle is courage. The Stoics considered courage one of the 4 cardinal virtues, and they understood that it sometimes takes enormous courage to do what's right for yourself. Leaving a toxic relationship requires courage to face uncertainty, to disappoint others, to admit that you've made a mistake, and to start over. But the alternative, staying in a situation that's slowly destroying you, requires no courage at all, only the willingness to accept gradual diminishment. There are several common obstacles that prevent people from leaving toxic relationships, even when they recognize the signs we've discussed. Understanding these obstacles can help you overcome them if you're facing this difficult decision. Fear of loneliness is perhaps the most common obstacle. Many people stay in harmful relationships because they're afraid of being alone. But the Stoics understood that there's a crucial difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone can be peaceful, productive, and restorative. Being lonely is a feeling that can exist even in the presence of others, especially if those others don't truly see, value, or respect you. Seneca wrote extensively about the value of solitude and the importance of being comfortable with your own company. He understood that people who can't bear to be alone are often driven to accept relationships that are ultimately harmful to them. Learning to enjoy your own company, to find fulfillment in your own thoughts and activities, is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Another common obstacle is the sunk cost fallacy. This is the tendency to continue investing in something because you've already invested so much, even when the investment is no longer paying off. In relationships, this might sound like, "We've been together for 5 years, I can't just throw that away," or "I've put so much effort into this relationship, I can't give up now." But the Stoics understood that time and energy already spent are gone, regardless of what you do next. The only question that matters is whether continuing to invest in this relationship will lead to a better future. If the answer is no, then the time you've already invested is even more reason to cut your losses and redirect your energy toward healthier connections. False hope is another trap that keeps people stuck in toxic relationships. This often involves focusing on potential rather than reality, believing that if you just find the right approach or wait long enough, the other person will change. But hope without evidence is not hope, it's fantasy. The Stoics valued truth above comfort, and the truth is that people change very rarely and very slowly, and only when they genuinely want to. Trauma bonding is a psychological phenomenon where intense experiences, both positive and negative, create strong emotional attachments that can be difficult to break. This is why some of the most toxic relationships can also feel the most intense and passionate. The highs feel higher because the lows are so low, creating an addictive cycle that has nothing to do with genuine love or compatibility. Understanding these obstacles can help you recognize when your judgment might be clouded by fear, false hope, or psychological manipulation. The Stoics would encourage you to examine your motivations honestly and make decisions based on reason and virtue rather than emotion and attachment. If you've recognized the signs of toxicity in one of your relationships and decided that it's time to let go, the next question is how to do so with dignity and grace. The Stoics believed in treating others with respect, even when ending relationships, not because the other person deserves it, but because maintaining your own integrity and character is always important. This doesn't mean you need to provide endless explanations or try to convince the other person that you're making the right decision. You don't need their permission or approval to leave, but you can communicate your decision clearly and kindly without unnecessary cruelty or drama. In some cases, particularly when there's been abuse or manipulation, the safest approach might be to leave without explanation. Your safety and well-being are more important than social conventions or the other person's feelings. Trust your instincts about what approach is safest for you. The Stoics also understood the importance of forgiveness, not for the other person's benefit, but for your own peace of mind. Holding on to anger and resentment after ending a toxic relationship only continues to give that person power over your emotional state. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, excusing, or reconciling. It means releasing the anger so that you can move forward with your life. After ending a toxic relationship, it's important to take time to heal and learn from the experience. The Stoics were great believers in examining our experiences to extract wisdom and prevent future mistakes. Ask yourself what signs you might have missed or ignored, what vulnerabilities the relationship exploited, and what boundaries you need to establish in future relationships. This process of reflection shouldn't become self-blame or regret. The Stoics understood that we make decisions based on the information and wisdom we have at the time, and that beating ourselves up for past choices serves no constructive purpose. Instead, focus on what you can learn and how you can grow from this experience. Use this time to reconnect with yourself, your values, and your goals. Toxic relationships often leave us feeling disconnected from our own thoughts and feelings. Spend time rediscovering what you enjoy, what you believe, and what you want from life. Pursue activities that bring you joy and fulfillment. Strengthen relationships with people who support and encourage you. Most importantly, work on developing the kind of inner strength and self-sufficiency that will make you less vulnerable to toxic relationships in the future. The Stoics believed that the person who is complete within themselves is the least likely to accept treatment that diminishes their well-being. When you know your own worth and are comfortable with your own company, you become much more selective about who you allow into your life. As we come to the end of our exploration today, I want you to remember that choosing to leave a toxic relationship is not giving up, it's choosing yourself. It's not selfish, it's necessary, it's not failure, it's wisdom. The courage to end relationships that are harming you is one of the most important skills you can develop, because it protects your ability to form healthy, fulfilling connections in the future. If you're currently in a relationship that exhibits the signs we've discussed today, please take them seriously. Your well-being matters. Your happiness matters. Your growth and flourishing matter. You deserve relationships that support your highest potential, not ones that diminish it. The ancient Stoics understood that life is short and precious, and that spending it in relationships that drain your energy and compromise your values is a tragic waste of your potential. They had the courage to end connections that no longer served their highest good, and they found peace and fulfillment in relationships built on mutual respect, virtue, and growth. You have that same courage within you. Trust yourself, honor your values, and choose relationships that help you become the person you're meant to be. Your future self will thank you for the courage you show today.